Hey everybody, John Gilbert here, Maryland K-12. I'm going to address another topic a little bit. I hope I don't go on too long. We're talking about politics in schools, particularly in Maryland. I've addressed this before a little while ago, and I got some response on it. And I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So keep in mind, if you have any doubts whether or not there's any politics at our school, just look at some of the bills coming up in the Maryland General Assembly. Got a whole nother series going out on that. So, subscribe to my stuff, keep an eye on it, and I'll give you some insight. I'd love to hear from you. Um, Politics in the classroom, we hear this all the time. We hear politicians saying, we need to keep politics out of our schools. We hear parents at board meetings and teachers and all in many cases at board meetings saying, we need to keep politics out of school. Well, what that usually means, unfortunately, it means you need to keep your politics out of school and or out of our schools. And my feelings, my arguments, what I have to say, that's not political. That's just common sense. Um, and therein lies the issue. What one side thinks is common sense, the other side thinks is political, and vice versa. Everything is political. You can't get rid of it. So before you start saying we need to get politics out of school, let's first of all say, well, what is politics? How do we define it? That's a tough one. I really thought about it and dug around a little bit and came up. And basically it's about power and decisions and who decides what is the best policy. I think that the root word in there is, policy, political. It all comes down with public policy. And when it comes to our schools, it's like who decides what is taught, how it's taught, etc. It's all political. That's all politics. In a larger sense, politics is it's not just about voting and running for office and political campaigns and all that. Of course, that's part of it. And what are they running for? They're running for positions so that they can then be the person in charge and they can then dictate the policy. So it's the whole world of politics is just all about who makes the decisions and how these decisions are made and who has input and that sort of thing. The decisions themselves, the result of those decisions themselves, are on a wide scale, and the stuff that's in the middle that everybody generally agrees upon is usually not looked at as politics, but it kind of is. It's in the middle, and everybody agrees. It's common sense. But as we start drifting apart from each side, it goes further and further to the I won't say to the extremes, but further and further away from what is generally acceptable by everyone else. Um, then they start challenging politics. But I hear it all the time. I hear politicians, we got to put politics. They're playing politics. Yeah, you're all playing politics, and it happens in schools. So what are some examples? Here's this example I like to come up with. Suppose you go into your child's elementary school, and you see a big sign up that says "Be kind." It has some flowers and a bunch of people smiling, and you go, "Oh, that's nice." Elementary school, yeah, we should all be kind. Everybody agrees we should be kind. I agree, and hopefully you do too. That's generally pretty good. But suppose you go to the next class and there's that same sign that says "Be kind," but it has a rainbow feature. Then is that political? Yeah, absolutely, it's political. But the first one was political too. Okay, because it's about that's our policy. Generally our culture says we should be kind to each other. We all agree on it. We don't do it, but we all agree that we should. The second one, we see that as politics. And then people get upset. You're trying to instill a political agenda. A couple of main points in Maryland schools right now is all about politics. Bathrooms and locker rooms. Conservative in general do not want males in girls' locker rooms for any reason. They just don't want them. And I agree with that, rightfully so. But those people who are on the other side say, no, wait a minute. If you say that, you are excluding an entire group of people and you are singling them out. You are disallowing them to express who they really are. And to them, that's common sense. And they believe wholeheartedly that they should be allowed to do that. On the other side of that argument, which is generally where I tend to be, is that, well, I understand that and I don't deny that, but that should not permit a biological male because it makes everyone else very uncomfortable, shall we say. That's a tough one. Girls' sports, one side says this is just inherently physically unfair, and I agree with that. The other side would say, well, hold on a second. The same argument as the first one. These are people who are identify as a female, and that's where they should be. And to say no, you are discriminating against them, and you are causing trouble on them. And it's a valid argument. I don't agree with it, and but it's a tough one. Some of the other ones, when like Frederick County, particularly recently, what they've done is they've created a policy. Well, they've kind of always had it, but they've been kind of revising it, where if a child comes to school and uses different pronouns or insists on using different pronouns, a boy comes in and says he now wants to be a girl, the Frederick County teachers, administrators, they are forbidden to call and notify the parents. That's a tough one. And I've said this before, and that's because, in education, that's all we ever talk about. We have to keep the parents involved. We got to do this. We got to do this. Parents need to be involved. And for whatever reason, in this one particular case, we say no. We can't be completely neutral. It's almost impossible, and it really gets deep when you think about it, because policies, neutrality is impossible. And I'm looking at some of my notes I have an article on my website that goes in a little bit more detail than I'm yapping about here. Neutrality becomes impossible when policies reflect one worldview while just completely ignoring another. Your policies do that. Let's look at what they say book bans. One side says, well, we're banning the books. The other side, we're not banning. We're just trying to make decisions about what we think is appropriate for our children. It's not political. Yes, it's all political. Schools that treat contested issues as the settled truth doesn't mean it's the settled truth if the school policy comes down in a certain way, and that's the way it's decided by those in power to implement the policy or to create the policy. Doesn't mean it's a settled truth. It just means it's something that, by nature of law, that's what we have to abide by. Decisions being made without community input really makes it difficult to have neutrality. And then concerns, and this is probably one of my biggest ones, the concerns are just dismissed instead of discussed. I saw that a lot in the last couple boards of elections across the state, where that maybe the more progressive person won, or maybe not necessarily a terribly progressive person, but someone who was supported by the teachers unions, people who were supported by various more progressive folks. They won the election, and now they've decided, hey, we won, we got to get rid of these crazy. Well, if you look at the numbers, it was very close right down the middle, okay? So what that tells you is the folks who aligned with the candidates with the opposing view numbered to close to half of the constituents in most counties. So you can't just dismiss them. They have to be discussed, and that is a very valid, legitimate argument to be entertained. Generally speaking, in Maryland, teachers want, or parents want, and not just Maryland, all places, they want safe schools. That's a whole different topic. They want strong academics. They want respect for parental authority. Strong academics. They send their kids to school to learn. They don't send them there to be taught about what a boy and a girl is. Okay, they send them there for strong academics. They want transparencies about policies. They want age content or age-appropriate content. And they want a learning environment that's free from activism on either side. Think about that. Think about that church in Minnesota, I think it was, where Don Lemon took his people in there. And whatever side of the argument you're on there, that's activism. I mean, we don't want activism in our schools. We want kids to learn. Hope I didn't go on too long, but what I'm saying is all this stuff, you put it all together. The bottom line is, when someone says keep politics out of school, what it means is you need to keep your politics out of school, but my politics are perfectly sensible. So anyway, I hope this helps. I would love to hear your comments. I'm sure I'll get a few. And let's hear what you have to say. Thanks. And make sure you subscribe to all my stuff. Thanks. Have a great day.